Hello everyone, welcome to Learn English Like an Expert with IELTS Unit. My name is Olivia and I will be assisting you all throughout this event. And today, as you guys can guess from the title, we'll be discussing the basics of IELTS featuring Mr. Edward Phillips from Wall Street English. Mr. Ed is basically a trainer in Wall Street English. So now, without any further ado, we will turn the time over to the discussion. Mr. Ed, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, okay, so today we're just going to discuss the IELTS exam. We'll have a look at it in detail and we will look at what to expect. We will look at the benefits it can bring and we will look at what it can do for you. Okay. Let me share my screen and let's begin. Okay, so you can see my screen, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, the title of How Ready Are You for IELTS? So, just a quick introduction. I'm Edwin. I'm from the UK. I'm an English trainer with Wall Street. And we're going to discuss how the IELTS is important and what benefits it can bring for you. We're going to take a closer look at the IELTS exam to understand the different pieces, what to expect, how the different sections are scored, and what kind of tasks to expect. Okay. So let's get started. So the most popular countries where IELTS is accepted can be seen on this map. To clarify the IELTS exam for anyone who isn't sure, it's an English language proficiency exam that is required to be taken by international candidates or anybody considering studying or working in a country where English is the main language of communication. So North America, Canada, the UK, South Africa, Australia. So there are learning institutions in these countries that will accept candidates without IELTS or a TOEFL, but either of these tests are there to clarify the ability of a speaker. Any candidate who doesn't have an IELTS or a TOEFL, that's going to be an obstacle for any student who wishes to pursue higher education abroad. Okay. So just to look specifically at the IELTS, okay, there are two flavors. We have the academic flavor or the general flavor. So IELTS developed the academic flavor if you wish to study at a university or a college as an undergraduate or a postgraduate student, or if you wanted to gain entry into a professional institution. Of course, there is the general training, which is more used for migration into a country. The most popular test from the two IELTS flavors is the academic test. Okay. So IELTS, what can it do? What benefits can it bring? Well, the IELTS is important because it means your English is at a level where you don't need to think about it, or in order to doing a particular course or to study. The benefits this will bring allow you to do different things. It's an internationally recognized grading system. By completing an IELTS test, you will receive a report that is recognized and accepted by thousands of institutions around the world, including companies, universities, professional bodies, government agencies. We can discuss the differences between the TOEFL test and the IELTS test shortly. But first, let's have a look at an overview specifically of the IELTS. So the IELTS test reflects everyday situations. It's designed to be unbiased and fair to everyone who takes the test from any background. It can be taken on paper or on a computer. We do go to IELTS test centers, while the speaking test is carried out face-to-face with an IELTS trained examiner. So whether or not the test is taken on paper or on a computer, the speaking section will be face-to-face. There are two parts, two tasks that comprise the writing component. So here on the screen, we can see the two tasks for what to expect for the writing section. So this would be given 60 minutes to complete, and task one is dependent on which flavor you are taking. If you are taking the academic flavor, task one is normally to describe a graph, a diagram, or a chart. Whereas if you take the general flavor, the first task is to write a letter. This would be around 150 words. You'd want to spend around 20-25 minutes on this. The second task for academic and general is to write an essay. And you would want to put aside maybe 35 minutes, if possible 40 for this task. And the essay, there are different topics that are normally required. There could be a discussion or an opinion-based essay. You could be asked to agree and disagree against the topic. Likewise, comparing and contrasting, or you might be asked to explain the advantages and disadvantages of a particular subject. So there's also the reading section of the IELTS, which we can look at next. So again, this is a 60-minute component. If you are taking the academic flavor, you will be asked to read 3 texts and answer 40 questions, which equates to 13 or 14 questions for each paragraph, each text. If you're taking the general flavor, then the texts are simpler and tend to be shorter than the academic flavor. The types of questions you're likely to expect could be a true, false, not given. You might be asked to maybe select multiple choice questions. So this is normally followed by a listening component in the IELTS, which will take about 30 minutes. Of course, again, this will be in the IELTS test center. This is 4 sections, each with 10 questions. Sections 1 and 2 are based on everyday social contexts, and sections 3 and 4 cover educational and training contexts. You will be asked to listen to people speaking and be given different questions to answer. So this could be multiple choice, it could be matching different pieces of text, it could be asking for sentence completion or short answer questions. Okay, and the speaking component. Okay, so the IELTS speaking face-to-face component is with a qualified and trained examiner who will interact and assess the test taker's communicative skills in English. This will prompt a more realistic performance from test takers than simply responding to a recorded cue from a computer. There are 7 common speaking question types that you would likely encounter, these being opinions. So you might be asked about, what do you think about something? You might be asked to evaluate someone else's opinion. You might be asked about the future. You might be asked about a cause and effect. Or perhaps you might be asked to talk about a hypothetical, imaginary, or unreal situation. Okay, so those are the basic components of an IELTS. Let's have a look at the band scores of an IELTS, and we can briefly discuss what kind of band educational institution might likely accept, and we can also compare these to a TOEFL test. This is possibly a good moment to maybe discuss TOEFL and IELTS scoring and perhaps what the difference is between the two. So essentially IELTS and TOEFL, they are the 2 most popular English speaking tests that we have. They are both very similar in they both have the same components for reading, writing, speaking, listening. The main differences perhaps are the TOEFL being an American test and the IELTS being a British test. Maybe the TOEFL scoring is different. Okay, so with the IELTS and the TOEFL, when you complete the test, you are given a score. There is no such thing as a pass score. You are just given a score. With IELTS, this ranges between band 0 and band 9, and we also have halfway points. So this could be 1.5, 2.5. With TOEFL, we are given a score between 0 and 120. So with the TOEFL, we are given 30 points for each component piece. And likewise, with the IELTS, we are given a band score for each component piece, which make up our final score at the end. So in terms of what educational institution will accept in order to study, this depends on the institution itself. Typically, in a English-speaking country, you're looking at a band 6.5 to be able to be accepted onto a course. Some institutions might ask for a band 7, although these would be in the minority, I would say. So you're looking about a band 6.5 to be accepted onto a further education in a English-speaking institution. Okay, so the higher the score, it reflects a better understanding and ability to communicate in English. So whether it's an immigration body, a university, a workplace, they will have their own IELTS score requirements. For example, University College London is a 6.5, Oxford and Cambridge University are a 7. Okay, so let's just have a look at some tips on how you can prepare for the IELTS. Okay, so I think the most important thing for IELTS preparation is to remember why you are taking the test. Motivation is the key here. You need to be mentally prepared, and you need to remember why you are taking the test. What is your final goal? Why are you, what do you want from your IELTS? And how will your life change in the future? So while you are preparing for the test, always remember the reason why you are doing the test. Just keep yourself motivated and mentally strong. So setting yourself goals is key. Maybe your test is next week, next month. Maybe your test is in 3 months' time, or maybe you are just thinking about your test for next year. So you should start to prepare now. And you can do this by setting yourself goals. You can break your goals down into weekly and daily goals. And you can start to prepare right now. So let's look at tips for writing. Imagine that the key here is to be familiar with the test. Okay, so for IELTS academic, we want to remember that the writing task 1 is 150 words. It can be a line graph, a bar chart. It could be 4 pie charts or a process diagram. So you don't want to get a surprise when you open the test. You want to have seen the test before. You want to have practiced the test. You want to have completed the test. You don't want any surprises at all. So in your preparation, you want to recognize all of the tasks. You've done them before. For example, if you were taking the IELTS general flavor, writing task 1 could be formal, semi-formal, or informal. Within that, you don't really know the question or the topic, but you know that you're going to write a letter, and you should have studied the 3 different types of writing, and you will already know how to start and end, what kind of language to use. Okay, writing tip number 2 is answer the question. So this might seem very obvious that when you get your question, you read it carefully and answer it. However, a lot of people don't. What people tend to do is have some memorized essay in their head, and they're just going to write the essay on test day. But it won't hit the criteria, number 1, which is the task response, which we can look at in a moment, which means you actually answer the question fully. So on your test day, you need to clear your mind, you need to read the question, you need to make sure you've understood the question, and your writing needs to answer each part of the question. Let's have a quick look at an example. So here is an example question, okay, from the writing. So let's have a look at some important features of this question. So we have the question in bold: living in a country where you have to speak a foreign language can cause serious social problems as well as practical problems. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? That is the question. Okay, the first thing we should do is identify the important features of the question. In this case, we can say that serious social problems is a important feature. So this would be serious social problem could be miscommunication while shopping, or maybe making friends at university. So those are our examples, okay? Another important feature of this question is asking about practical problems, okay? So for example, this could be trouble booking into hotel rooms, trouble buying a ticket. Okay, so these are the type of things the examiner wants to see you write about. However, what is the question? The question itself is, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the statement? Okay. So a big problem with this question could be someone is writing about social problems, maybe neglecting the practical problems, or instead of writing about to what extent they agree or disagree, they talk about the disadvantages. Don't do that. Make sure you read the question, you understand it, and you answer the question. So here you would be writing about to the extent you agree or disagree with the statement. So in terms of writing, we can set ourselves some daily goals. Maybe, for example, each day you could rewrite the task 1 and 2 from the writing task, covering all the different task types. You could attend or watch a live class, or you could write a paragraph of text each day. If you're setting yourself a weekly writing goal in preparation, you could maybe do a full practice test once a week. So remember, we can get free tests, mock tests off of the British Council or the Cambridge English website. And remember that the full test, it's good to build up your endurance in preparation, because on test day, the test will take you about 3 hours. So you need to build up your endurance, especially if you're writing with a pen, with a paper-based test. You want to get your endurance built up so you can prepare. Okay, let's have a look at some reading tips. So in order to improve your reading score, you should do practice tests. But of course, there's a bit more to it than that. There are free tests on the internet. The best quality ones are the Cambridge ones and the British Council ones. But imagine you are aiming for a 6.5 and you repeatedly keep scoring a 5.5. How do you actually increase your reading score? Well, if you are repeatedly just doing practice test after practice test, it's not really going to help you if you're stuck at the same level. So let's just look at a couple of tips on how to help your reading score. So tip number 1, grow your vocabulary. So there's a very strong correlation between how many words you know and your reading score. So how much you understand when you are reading. So this is quite simple. The more vocabulary you know, the higher your reading score is going to be. And we're lucky because vocabulary learning can be fun, and there are simple ways to do it, like flashcards or apps on your phone. And obviously, just exposure to English will improve your vocabulary. Building your vocabulary should be a very strong part of your IELTS preparation. Time management is an important aspect. There's the word automaticity, which means you can do things unconsciously with speed and accuracy while consciously carrying on other brain functions. So with this ability to do other things without occupying your mind with low-level details, allows it to become an automatic response. So you need to be able to recognize words quickly. If you spend a few seconds on each word, it takes a lot of time. If you do it 100 times, it will use up your time. So it's not about collecting a list of words, it's about meeting them regularly, internalizing them, producing them, so that when you're reading the word, you recognize it and you don't spend time thinking about it. Okay, tip number 2 for reading is paragraph by paragraph. So particularly in academic reading, there are different approaches to understanding a paragraph of text. And if one method isn't working, let's try another method. Okay, so a couple of methods that we're going to try to work for you, see if they work for you. Let's just look at the different question types in IELTS. So for example, match information or match headings, true, false, or not given. In this approach, we'll discuss a match information, and this is the paragraph by paragraph method. Okay, so if here we have our section on, this is a piece of text we're expected to read. We don't want to spend all our time reading this and referring back to it. We just want to read it once, okay? We don't want to repeat returning to this text. So we might just look at paragraph A. So we look at the first paragraph only, and then we look at the questions. Okay, so for example, here are some questions. We are asked to choose which paragraph of the text contains the information. But we are just focusing on paragraph A. So we can look at each question, question 1, question 2, question 3. Is this about paragraph A? Is it about paragraph A? We want to spend our time on the questions, not on the text. We're just on the first paragraph at the moment. Any of these questions where we can find the answer for paragraph A. So for example, here is paragraph A again, okay? And here are the first 7 questions, okay? We don't want to look at paragraph B or C or D or E. We just want to look at paragraph A. So question 1, question 2, question 3, can we find the information? No, no, no. When we find the information or the answer to one of these questions, we can just select paragraph A. We've got the information. Okay, we've got the answers. Then we just look at paragraph B. And we forget about paragraph A. We're finished with paragraph A. And then we would repeat the process with paragraph C, paragraph D, paragraph E. Okay. So in terms of setting ourselves goals for reading, we can every day try to read an article. When you're reading, try to summarize the paragraphs. Okay, so maybe just from a newspaper, a magazine, read a paragraph and try to put in one sentence, just summarize what is that paragraph about. Or perhaps find 5 new words a day, make some flashcards. We can make some post-it notes just to increase your vocabulary. In terms of weekly reading goals, we can maybe try doing a full practice test every week. Again, from the British Council, from the Cambridge English website, we can get good quality free mock tests. So let's have a look for some listening tips. And so the IELTS audio will be quite slow and artificial, and the speech is very clear. The accents are quite neutral. There will be different accents, but they're very clear. It's not like real spoken English where people are just like blah, 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 blah. It's not like that. But you want to be familiar with the question types, and you want to, let's look at some tips for listening. So this is a basic skill, a basic listening skill as well, so reading ahead. So read the questions before you hear the audio. Don't just focus on question 1, read all of the questions. Everybody tends to focus on question 1. It makes a big difference to your score if you are listening for answers to questions that you already know. The teacher will ask you to read ahead, and maybe the test says look at question 1 to 7 or 1 to 6. Make sure you do it. Don't just look at the questions, read the questions, okay? So for example, here is an example for some questions from the listening component. So there's only 4 questions, but there's a huge amount of text here. Okay, if you were just looking at question 21 and reading A, reading B, this will use up your time. You haven't even read question 24. Okay, so just ignore A, B, C, just read the questions, okay? You need to read question 21, question 22, question 23, question 24. That's more important for you to have read than the possible answers. This will be, if you have a spare minute, you have a spare 30 seconds between the audio, use that time to read the questions. So the listening test lasts for about 30 minutes. And it can be quite stressful because you're listening and you're reading. And especially with multiple choice, there's lots to read and you have to read quickly. So you want to just read the questions first. When you are answering the questions, you want to have already heard the answer or read the answer that you hear. Okay? So read ahead. Listening tip number 2, listen to more English. And luckily, this is quite easy, thanks to the internet, podcasts, movies, music, YouTube. Just listen to more English, and this will help your listening, okay? Whether it's IELTS, whether it's TOEFL, you will notice that the English in the audio is much slower in the listening components. So the more you can listen to real spoken English, you will find the IELTS listening a lot easier. In terms of what goals you can set yourself for working towards your IELTS, your preparation. You can maybe watch a TV show every day. You could listen to a podcast every day. Maybe each week you could listen to a podcast with the transcripts. Okay? So this is obviously subtitles are very helpful when learning, but just exposure to real English will help your listening component in your IELTS. And okay, lastly, let's look at some IELTS speaking tips. So speaking tip number 1 is speak English a lot. It's another obvious one. It can be difficult though, because maybe you live alone, or maybe you don't know anyone who speaks English, but you can find people online. You can practice English on Facebook groups or people who are looking for study buddies. The important thing is to commit to it, maybe twice a week, have a Zoom session or join an online class, something like this. Or you can talk to your cat, talk to your mirror. You can record yourself, maybe record yourself and watch back afterwards. You could practice speaking IELTS questions. Perhaps a few days before the IELTS test, you could stop speaking Indonesian. That would be a good preparation. Second tip would be to practice with the criteria. So here, what this means is examiners give scores based on criteria. So examiners will listen to the candidates and assess them by the criteria. So here is an example of a scoring matrix used by an examiner. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of information, but we are just looking at the band descriptors at the top. Okay, we have fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. And of course, we have the 9 bands on the side. So let's just simplify this and take a look at one. Okay, so fluency and coherence is if you speak without any effort, you use connecting words, discourse markers, you can develop your sentences and your topics. Lexical resource means vocabulary. So the more vocabulary you have, the higher you will score in this category. Grammatical range and accuracy. If you can use different range of structures, you will get a higher score in this category. Pronunciation, maybe using stress and intonation, clear pronunciation, you again will score higher in that category. So even if you just use one example of idioms or less common vocabulary, or you use paraphrasing, you will get marks in the different categories and your overall score will be higher. So it is complicated, but just try to remember that the examiner is listening for certain things. So maybe in terms of your practicing, you might say, today I will practice using a structure. I will practice using gerunds or infinitives or modal verbs, and just practice speaking them, okay? And maybe record yourself and listen back. So the tip here is to work with the criteria and focus on the things you need to work with. This is what your score is based on. So let's just look at some goals For our speaking, we could, well, maybe just try practice speaking for 1 minute, or maybe 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute on the same topic. And this will help you become more coherent and precise. One of the IELTS speaking tasks is a 2-minute monologue. So this is good practice. Very good preparation. Another tip, maybe you could do a speaking test with a grammar checklist. So you might say, I will speak for 2 minutes and I will use 5 modal verbs. And as you speak them, you can tick them off your list. Maybe for your weekly speaking goal, you can try speaking English for 30 minutes with no break. So if you break down your preparation into smaller, achievable goals, whether they be weekly or daily, whether your IELTS or your TOEFL is in 1 month or 3 months or 6 months, you can start now to prepare for it. So I hope these tips have been useful. I'm going to pass back to Olivia, if that's okay. Olivia?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for the amazing presentation. We actually have some quick questions, but it seems like Mr. Phillips has covered all of the questions in his presentation. All right. Before ending the session, I'd like to invite Kak Kevin Arigi Darmana, who's going to inform us of what Wall Street English is. Kak Kevin, please.
Okay, so well, it was a very interesting informations that we had previously about IELTS, and hopefully what Edwin had given previously could be like, you know, an insight for you to see like what makes the difference between like, you know, IELTS and any other English test, yeah, especially when we talk about proficiency. So if you want to find out more about, you know, how to get better in IELTS, what you need to prepare before IELTS, feel free to visit us in Wall Street English Center. So we have one in Surabaya. If you are in, you know, if you are from East Java, you can come and visit Pakuan Mall. So we are on the 2nd floor in the Food Society level. So we are next to Kopi Kenangan. So if you have a chance to, you know, like coming to Pakuan Mall, you want to meet Edwin, yeah, our amazing ET here. So just come into the centers, yeah. We'll be looking forward to see you guys. All right. I think that's it. I'll give it back to Alif.
I think this concludes our session today. So thank you everyone for joining us and making it successful. We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Okay, thanks guys. Bye-bye.